Good evening, everybody, and welcome to GlogNet. I am Stephen Ball, the acting president of GlogNet. Tonight, we are pleased to welcome Jochen Kirstätter, who will be speaking to us about Google Gemini AI with .NET. But before we get started, a little bit about us. We are the Greater Lansing user group for .NET developers, currently based out of Okemos, Michigan, as pictured on this map here. Our meetups are free and open to the public, held every third Thursday of the month. The best way to find out more about our meetups and what we have coming up is to go to our meetup site, meetup.com/glognet. As much as possible, we like to record our meetups, and they are posted to YouTube by our own Sam Nasser. You can use the QR code on the screen here, or go to youtube.com/@SamNasserMVP to find those recordings. Before we get started tonight, a few housekeeping items. We are always looking for lightning talks before our meetings. Tonight, we are pleased to have Matthew Hess with us, who will be giving us a lightning talk. If you would like to be like Matthew and give us a lightning talk, you can let either myself know or Joe Kunk, and we would be happy to slot you in somewhere. And our presentations tonight are designed to be interactive. If you have a question for one of our presenters, or the presenter has a question for us to answer, please feel free to come off mute and talk. If you are unable to or just don't feel comfortable, we understand that too. There is a chat feature in GoTo that we will be monitoring for questions along the way. But we ask if you're just listening to please stay muted. That way we can all enjoy the presentations this evening. At the conclusion of tonight's presentation, there will be a survey made available to all attendees. We are looking for feedback in two particular areas. First of all, how did we as an organization do with advertising this event? And secondly, our presenter. What did you like? What didn't you like? All the answers we receive are completely anonymous. We then roll up a nice summary and send it to our presenter so that Jochen can improve this presentation for other groups. So I would very much encourage you to please leave your feedback. We will leave that survey open for about 24 hours. So if you do need to think about it for a little bit, or you have to run and get the kids to bed or something, totally understandable. You can leave your feedback. The link is there. The QR code is there. We will share the link again at the end of the presentation if you didn't catch it just yet. Our sponsors for this evening, NAS Technologies, who is providing us this go-to session, and the .NET Foundation for their financial support of GlogNet.
As well, quick introduction. My name is Jochen Kirstätter, or Joki, which is easier to pronounce for English as well as French-speaking developers. Why French? Actually, I am based in Mauritius, the small Indian Ocean island in the middle of nowhere. So if you might know Africa, you go further east, Madagascar, you go further east, and then 1,200 kilometers off the continent, you get Mauritius. That's what I'm based on. Right now it's like 2 o'clock something in the morning. So I'm very pleased to have the conversation with Joe and with Stephen regarding the participate in the user group. Myself, I'm professional software developer since 25 years now. I started with .NET back in 2001, 2002, early betas, doing other stuff as well. And Microsoft MVP, Google Developer Expert for Google Cloud. And since about 2.5 years, I'm exploring the possibilities about using Gemini, and in particular about how using it with .NET. And let's jump into it. As a word of warning, there is not one Gemini. There are multiple incarnations, so it can be quite confusing when you work with Gemini, or when you talk about Gemini. It has, as it is as developers, naming things is the hardest part in your daily life. So the same problem is with Google. You might have heard of a product called Gemini Chat. This was the old Bard application. Then there's the current Gemini app that you also get on your mobile. Then if you use Visual Studio Code, or if you use JetBrains Rider or any other IDE, you might have the possibility to plug in a code assist. So there's Gemini Code Assist. And on the other side, what we are interested in tonight is about looking into the Gemini API. However, again, there's a problem because it exists in two iterations or incarnations. One is the Google AI Studio variant, which is more like, exploring, experimenting, prototyping. And if you want to put it into production, you would actually then use the Gemini API that runs on Vertex AI Studio, meaning it is running on Google Cloud Platform, so that you have all the enterprise features regarding security, access rights, billing, etc., etc. So there are also then different levels of quotas. However, the interesting part when it's about talking SDK now for .NET is a situation that actually, let me see if I can swap that, hang on, is that Google itself provides SDKs officially from them for Python, Node.js, Swift, Java. The older SDKs are also available for Go and Flutter. And the .NET SDK that I'm talking about tonight is actually open source. It's not by Google. It has been developed last year by me within a couple of weeks, and it's completely based on the official REST API. So I tried to make it as close as the official ones. However, there are syntactical differences about how you do things in .NET compared to how you would do things in Java or Python. So, but even then, that's not a big deal about the differences. Coming back, Gemini has multimodal understanding, meaning you can feed it with text, audio, images, videos. It processes it, and it also then can give you output in text, in image, in video, and as well audio is coming up. So there's quite some developments, and also next week, Google I/O, I think there will be a couple of announcements coming. In regards to the possibilities about how you can use Gemini for your applications, there are typical use cases about, okay, you do code explanation, onboarding, like creating a chatbot for a specific domain that you have like a first response support channel eventually. As a developer, you can use it to generate and debug code. We can generate documentation, summarization of documentation, bits and pieces. And the interesting part is also that since we have these code assistants, English is the new programming language. So meaning just by simple English statements, you can generate SQL queries, you can create regular expressions, which is quite tough when you work with regular expressions, as well as having code command line assistance. There are quite some tools available, and I see Gemini is used more and more. All right, then famous quote from Linus Torvalds: "Talk is cheap. Show me the code." In parallel, I'm seeing that I pop open. Can I see the chat here? Not sure. Otherwise, Joe, if you don't mind to interrupt me if there's anything regarding questions in the chat, feel free.
Yep, I'll be keeping an eye on that for you.
That would be great. Thank you so much. I'm using JetBrains Rider because actually I'm running it on Linux, which is my personal preference. And for that, I would say we start with a simple application like Gemini console application. Pretty simple to go forward with that. Just give it a moment, and I'm popping this up. Size. Oops. So first of all, here is that when we talk about Gemini, is a situation similar like other providers like OpenAI, Anthropic, and so on, that there is a variety of models. Here in my application, I provide a list. It's a demo application. It's also going to be available actually then on GitHub. I can share the links then afterwards. We see there's still the old Gemini 1.0 models, the 1.5 Flash, the Pro models, then the 2.0 Flash as well as Pro models, and now the latest 2.5 Flash and Pro models, and a couple of extra models like open source Gemma 3, image generation model, Imagen 3, as well as there is also video generation model called Veo 2. The available list or the list of available models would vary on your access permissions. So I'm part of early access program, so I have a couple of models more. The main difference with the models is that the higher the version number, the more capabilities it has. On the other side, the main difference between Flash and Pro is actually that the Flash model responds faster. It has lower latency. However, it has less capabilities compared to the Pro. The Pro is more like like a deep thinker, deep mind approach, and even then you can get the different variations. Like here, we get a Gemini 2 Flash preview for image generation, or we have, let's say, like the latest 2.5 Pro, which comes also then with the possibilities about thinking capabilities and reasoning. So my recommendation is that start with a simple one, like 2.0 Flash. And if you're feeling comfortable, you can just, change the model and see maybe if there's a different iteration, or Gemini, Google announced a new model and you want to experiment, you can simply switch into the new model and use and go forward with it. All right. Now, in this case, chat application, I'm using, let's say, to show you the difference, a Flash preview model, and then it's like, what is Google Gemini? And oops, that was the wrong part. Let's try it again. So it's just a quick console demo application. And here as well, we see the possibility that it is offering streaming options, as well as it has the API actually has two endpoints. One that you can wait till the answer is completely assembled on the model side and you get it in one go, or as you've just seen it, that you get it more like a streaming approach and it gives you the responses back. By default, you see these kind of funny formattings. This is Markdown. So Gemini models in general respond all the answers first in Markdown. However, you can instruct it that you want to have plain text or maybe any kind of other format that you would like to work with. How do you get started? I would suggest that you would go onto their website, which is ai.google.dev. So ai.google.dev, and let me also share the link. Then if the chat is available, let me just see. No, I don't see a chat interface here. Okay. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Okay. So the link, you would sign in, most likely with a Google account. Let me just quickly do that. Okay. And if you're going there first time, you would be then exploring the models. You get a quick overview, and the starting point is about that you need to generate an API key. So let's go in there. Let's see where we are, exploring the models. And you would pop up here, get API key. I already have a couple of ones. For you, it would be then just to say here, create API key. And you don't have to connect it with Google Cloud. You can also leave it standalone. Again, it has something to do with the quotas and billing. In my case, as I previously set up billing already with previous keys, I'm going to get asked for a project. In your case, if you don't have any projects configured, just go ahead and you get your free tier as the plan, and you can start with it. All right. You see as well here a simple example how to use a curl statement that you can just execute on the command prompt. Yeah, it works. Okay, for Windows, you need to install curl in order to use it. However, on Linux, on macOS, curl is part of the default tools usually. And so you would copy and paste that and you would be able to start with it. When we have a look, let me just check this back into the studio. The UI itself, if you have experimented it, then you get again the list. It is a little bit classified or categorized, grouped into different points, different models, and you get the details about also expected price ranges, what the use cases are for, what the best use cases are for, or what is the purpose of it. And you get a little information about the knowledge cutoff. Here in this case, January 25, which means this is all the information up to January 25 has been used in regards to train the model. Anything beyond that cutoff date, like today, is something that the model would not know by default. However, there are possibilities and features how the model can be extended. And again, we're going to look into the code, and I would say we just go ahead with that. I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible because, quite frankly, as I wrote the Gemini SDK for .NET, there are tons and tons and tons of test cases which I use with XUnit. And these are actually then the ones that I'm just using tonight as demos. If you want to, before we start heading into that, let me just go back again. Sorry for that. If you want to know more about the SDK itself, it's available in the NuGet gallery. So it's mscc.generative.ai and .NET App package for the .NET CLI, or if you're in Visual Studio, you can use the package manager, install package, mscc.generative.ai. Version is optional. The latest is 2.5.5. Right now, I think there are approximately over 55, almost 56,000 downloads over the past versions. So it's quite active, and it's not the only package, even if you go then onto GitHub, there's also the repository. There's the base package, MSCC generative, but also then specific extensions, or let's say top-ups, which means that on the one side, there's the MSCC generative AI.web. If you want to integrate Gemini into ASP.NET Core applications, I recommend that you would use the web package. because it comes with additional helper functions, especially then for the service collection, for the initial startup, that get some extension methods in order then to activate it in your ASP.NET applications quicker and easier, or let's say the usual way, and not having to deal with, how do I get my configuration files set up and running. If you want to deploy onto Google Cloud Platform, and it's always then about authentication, I recommend the MSSC Generative AI Google package, because it has additional packages that makes it simpler to use the Google API client libraries for authentication. And if you're more of a fan about using Microsoft Extensions AI or Semantic Kernel, there's the fourth package, which is MSSC Generative AI.Microsoft, which gives you then a chat client, a chat completion client, as well as an embeddings client. But again, we're going to look into all of these as time allows. And here as well, the project itself, let me just check as well, share with you the URI. The README has the quick steps about how to install it, what are the general features, how you can use it, about using an API key, and maybe as well then some default environment variables that are automatically read and used, and effectively how you move forward and how you start. So meaning if we're using API key, you would add the package, you issue a using statement, then you specify that you want to have a Google AI, which means Google AI Studio with API key, and then you provide you get an instance of generative model with the model that you want to have. In this case, my SDK uses, all as you've seen earlier, the models are all based on their strings, on their names, which can be kind of confusing. That's why in my SDK, I'm using a model constant that simply provides all these strings then as properties. So I think it's then easier to work with it. And so this is the initial setup with an API key. And if in case that you want to use it on Google Cloud, instead of using then an API key, you would actually then specify a project, or better said, its project ID and the region where you want to run your code, or where your project is operating. So meaning that is effectively the only difference compared to the API key, where you decide whether you use AI Studio or Google AI, or you use Vertex AI. One is initialized with the API key, the other one with project ID and region. All the remaining code that is happening afterwards is identical. It gives you this unified experience, and that's exactly what Google then started to introduce in November last year with their new unified SDKs for Python. And now in March, they introduced the one for JavaScript. So yeah, I think the .NET SDK was a little bit ahead of Google. And it was quite fun because last year in June, July, I met with one of the program managers for the Python SDK, and I asked them why they still had two packages separated for Google AI and Vertex AI. And he was like, yeah, different teams, but they're merging. All right, now, simple scenario. When we work with the API key, again, as I said, we load it in, we get the model, and then with the instance of the model, we can generate content. Again, on my side, the whole SDK is async, await async. And I skipped on purpose the suffix async, because the whole SDK is asynchronous with all the methods. So as there are no synchronous methods, there was no purpose to repeat myself and violating the try principle. So the async suffixes are just skipped on all methods. However, you can always use await async pattern in order to get your responses and activities. Why did I do that? Because again, my implementation tries to be as close to the official SDKs. And if you look at the Python one or at the JavaScript one, they don't have those suffixes as well, which means that if you see sample code for the Python SDK, you could literally copy and paste it, change the syntax, and it would run in the .NET code. Yeah, then more examples. So the README is full of different things. And in order to make this live, I'm going into the test case. The general test case is Google AI Gemini should. And here we simply go with the latest Gemini Pro experimental. And as you see in the tooltip, it's just a string of the actual model, how you would get it in the list, like in AI Studio. I just find it more, let's say, comfortable, and being a lazy developer, I get autocomplete, I avoid typos and these kind of things. Let's do a simple test about generating content. Yeah, write a story about a magic backpack. I'm going as well. Oh, I forgot to mention the .NET SDK supports anything starting .NET Framework 4.7.2, which I think is still the recently supported .NET Framework, up to the latest .NET 9. I did not add .NET 10 yet. However, source code is available. Retargeting it is no problem because the SDK itself uses the multi-targeting monikers. So let's run this. And did it execute? Yep, it's active. As well, the SDK has automatically integrated the iLogger functionality. So if you're using logging facilities based on Microsoft extensions logging, you can integrate this as well directly. So it comes with the different levels of information like info, debug, tracing, and so on. So let's see where we got this one. Inclusive has not run. Yes, stupid me, because I said it's framework 7.0. Let's switch this and try it again. And let's do that. All right, this looks better. Yep. Request has failed. Too many requests. Okay, this is now the demo gods, which is good because in this case, you can experiment from time to time that you get an HTTP code 429, which is the response from the API that yes, quota exceeded. However, it does not mean that it's your personal, because if you're operating with an API key, you have shared quota with other developers. And so that's why I'm saying if you're using Google AI Studio part with API key, this is the experimental and prototyping part. The other thing that can happen from time to time is that you get HTTP 503, so server error on the side. In those two cases, you might consider about having a retry attempt. Give it a few seconds and try it again. Let's see if this is now a possibility. Let's see. No, we are still exhausted. All right, the demo gods are not with me. Let me see then quickly. Let's make it pretty simple. I'm just gonna go here and go for Gemini 2.0 Flash. As I mentioned, quite lazy. I get all the strings and we save this and we go and run the test again. Now with the Flash model, Gemini 2.0. Let's see. Crossing fingers. Yeah. Still busy. Okay, success. There we go. So now if we scroll down, again, as I said, this is very technical. This is because the logging is activated in my tests. In the end, the output would be like this. Maya, yeah, based on the magic backpack story. So the Gemini API just then comes back. In this case, my output uses plain text. So what you see here is actually markdown removed or markdown interpreted. So that's why we get the nice indented character paragraphs and then the separation and not anything regarding markdown syntax. And yeah, the performance is quite there. No questions so far. It's quite surprising. Okay. Then if you want to see a couple of more complex things, we can, as I said, responding is that, for example, we can also have information, instead of having plain text from the model, depending on your choice. You might also say, no, I want to use Gemini as part of an application and I need to have structured information back. So meaning in this case, you can use the model and set the JSON mode to true. This is similar like to the toggle button in the website, in the AI Studio website. And you can run the code as well. So let's run this quickly. Run the code, run the test code. Again, we are asking for a few popular cookie recipes. And there we go. So meaning now, based on the fact that we just activated the JSON mode, which is a feature of the .NET SDK, now we get an array and we get different recipes, chocolate chip cookies, peanut butter cookies with recipe name, description, ingredients as the JSON properties. If we have a look, it was actually nothing specified. It was just, yeah, give me JSON mode, and the model was now on best guess. Yeah, what would be like, what do you need for a cookie recipe? Was preparing or setting up this JSON model for the response for you. So that's only one feature. Of course, you might have already defined types so that you get the information back based on an existing class that you have in your application. Let me just figure this out. So meaning that we're talking then about the so-called response schema. So meaning that with the model now we are specifying an additional generation config. Yeah, previously this flag use JSON mode was like a high level, simplified approach. Now, when you want to have more control, you can actually go ahead and say, okay, for my model, I need to have a generation configuration. And there I specify that I have a response MIME type of application JSON. Yeah, just standard MIME media types. And in this case, now I say, okay, I need my response schema based on a list of recipe. And let me just look for that. If we go here, recipe is actually a class that has, a couple of properties like name. In .NET 9, it has recipe name additionally, and a list of ingredients based on string. So if I run this test now, I expect that all the JSON that is coming back is now based on my .NET class. or a list of my .NET class. So when we see, so this is the raw information that comes back from the API. And if we have this then formatted, there we go. Okay, we have recipe name as the string and ingredients as an array of the ingredients. Yeah, exactly how I specified now how I would like to have the information back. Okay. And this is again similarly to the Python SDK, because there you can specify types or classes based on the Pydantic package, and the Python SDK offers then the same functionality. So in the .NET SDK, I tried to keep it as simple as possible for developers. So as we are working with types, you just pass in the type that you want to have as the response schema. Under the hood, I'm using another package, which is the JSON generation or JSON everything package from Greg Dennis. And he, in his library, in his package, he has a word of warning that yes, you can generate the JSON schema with using his package. However, it should not be used this way on the fly in your application. So let me explain that. Meaning that what happens is that under the hood, the response schema property is actually a generated syntax based on JSON schema. And it's not well, for Gemini uses, how they call it, a select subset of the OpenAPI specification. And this has been applied here in order to generate this response schema. So meaning that the recommendation is that while developing, look at the output, and then instead of keeping just the type assignment for the response schema, you would actually then use this generated string where you have better control and you can skip the generation part on each request. That would be the proper approach on how to use this in an application of yours. How does this look like in the tests? This would be more looking something like, let me see, with string. Yeah, so that you would go here and specify the schema with all its details like description and so on, with required fields as string, and then you pass in the string instead of referencing your type. Yeah, the SDK understands both. Again, as a disclaimer by Greg Dennis, using the string is the more robust approach. And even then, running this test, it's going to generate then the same output. Yeah. For the model, it just passes in the string as is. And when we look at the response, then we see, okay, we get the menus with a date, with meals, and so on, based on the schema that we defined and passed into the model. Yeah? Okay. You're a very quiet crowd. Hoping for more feedback and questions. So feel free.
We've got one in the chat.
Yeah, there you are. Yes, for these test cases, you could never assert an exact response. No, actually, that's the interesting part, because as it is a language model, language models are not deterministic. So you cannot expect to get always the same result. However, like I'm using XUnit, or if you use any other test runner, and in this case, I'm even using then fluent assertions. Oops, what's that? Is that, yeah, with fluent assertions, I would actually then use something like contains. Yeah, let me just check for contains. Not this contains, but assert contains. No, it doesn't. Yeah, or you would use something like equal or greater or something like that. So you need to make, in my case, or I would suggest if you use tests, you would actually then make these more, legs. Yeah, that you say, okay, it's not exact value, but on average. But I'm trying to find this. I think I have this for counting tokens. Let me see. I think here, yes. For example, I use then, if I send in a text and I want to have a calculation for the expected token count, and yeah, I did not go that it is B as expected, but at least greater or equal than to the expected value. And because also depending on the model that you use, the token calculation or even then the generated content is different. Yeah, because again, those large language models are not deterministic. If I run the same test multiple times, like we had earlier, the content generation, and we saw there was something about the magic backpack in regards to Maya wasn't interested in magic. Okay, let's run this test again and see what the response is going to be. Yeah, write a story about a magic backpack. And we will now get a different story. So Maya hated Mondays and was not interested in magic. And so therefore it is quite difficult. It's not difficult, it's challenging. And I like to show you that as well. For example, if we use a test about image recognition, I need to go to my test back. So let's see about describe an image, and let's say, so describing an image. No. Just give it that. So what we do here is that we, on the GitHub repository, there's actually an image, and let me just show you. It looks like this. So there's like the timetable at the airport, and so we would like now to recognize the departure times and destinations. So meaning let's pass the time and city from the airport board using that image here. Sorry, yeah, adding the media, and as well this is a feature of the .NET SDK. Again, everything is async await or await async. So I'm giving it the prompt in Markdown. I want to have it explicitly here now in Markdown, and we run this test. So what happens is it downloads the image and then injects it as the inline data in base64. So if you have the images already locally, you can just by, instead of having this kind of structure of inline data, as you might have seen, it's just this, you add the media as the image, and the SDK does the conversion for you automatically. It works for files up to 20 megabyte. Otherwise, it would be using a feature offered by the Gemini API that you can use a temporary online storage, which is called the Files API, that gives you online storage of 2 GB. However, the content can only be uploaded and referenced, and it will be deleted automatically after 48 hours. It's like a, online cache somehow, for 2 days. And now if we look at the test result, and this is pretty large because I guess I need to open it in the full editor. Yep. And going at the very end. So here is then the actual response. Yeah, here's the list of time and city path and in Markdown. And let's see if this is actually correct, if we put them next to each other. So 10:50 Moscow looks good. 11:05 Edinburgh, good. 11:05 London. Yeah, seems quite okay. So here, this is a typical example about how you can just take an image and have Gemini parse it and give you a response. Now, in this case, it was marked down. Of course, there's the possibility that you say, okay, no, like we've seen earlier, I need this in structured output. So in this case, we would then specify, like earlier, a generation config and say, okay, I need this in JSON format. So if we do this live, let me just see if I have this somewhere. No, let me take the same test, just take that away. I don't want to have this in Markdown, but I want to have this in, so we would say config equals new generate content config. And then we say response MIME type equals application/JSON, and the response schema equals. Now we would need to specify a whole, let's say, string eventually. However, I just say, okay, this is a list of timetable because I already have, I think there is a, no, flight schedule, sorry, is a class, flight schedule, and I specify that. So meaning the flight schedule, if we look at this type, it has a string and a time and destination. And if we run this test now, what's this problem? Oh, new list of flight schedule. So instead of markdown, we want to have now an array of, oops, what was the error? New line expected. Okay. Oh, semicolon. All right. And we should have power tensors. Okay. That should be good now. And let's run the, not debug, but run the test. Okay, I open this as a full featured. And we're going to the bottom. Oh, still marked down. That's not good. That is again demo gods. Let me see. Async. Run. Nope, it won't give me. Oh, that's interesting. So we have a failed test. It doesn't give me markdown, which is weird. Of course, I need to pass in the configuration. Somebody, you should pay attention of what I'm doing. So yeah, if we generate a content request, we need to pass in our configuration. So let's try this again. Sorry for the mishap. So it's not only about creating the config, it does not apply automatically, but we need to pass it into the request object. So let's see. All good things are free. And if we look at the result, now generated in the output, there we go. So now we get our output, and well, seems to be a little bit mixed up because it is now not giving us individual records. But yeah, there you see as well, not the best option about doing some live coding, but having testing cases prepared or scenarios. However, it knows again Moscow, Edinburgh, London, Bucharest. It sees the time. It's just that the output format now, it does not really know what is my response schema. So meaning the generated schema is not too good. So I should work this out, and instead of passing in type, maybe then having an improved string in order then to get a better result out of that. But the main purpose was to show that Gemini has image understanding, which also as a developer, I like to do this. I'm having a image here. Let me just show you. No, not showing you that. Because what I do sometimes for programming is that I have my wireframe designs, working with a UI or UX colleague or a designer. So they might have a storyboard in regards to, a mobile app should look like this with, different screens. And the cool thing is actually, what I do is that I take these sketches, these wireframes, and feed them to Gemini in order to let it generate like a boilerplate source code and say, hey, I need these screens for in Maui.net, for example. And it literally gives me like X amount of code and files so that I save a lot of time and typing and already have like a jump start in order to go into the applications. All right. Yes, at Media, you have seen that the functionality here, the extension method, creates or downloads remote content and converts it into base 64 encoded string. However, there is the possibility that we can also use the Files API. And for that, we can also then, let me just run this. This is another test as well, using file data. So there is two types of content that can be, okay, it does not allow file data. Yeah, so that's the other side. Let me see then. However, for larger files, or if you need multiple files, there's then the possibility that you would use the so-called file API. And what happens here is that you would upload your images first into the Files API. And let me just see where I have that. Upload. Yeah, so let me just show you that. So I have here a couple of images, video, audio files, PDF, and so on, and even rich text format, and with a description. And what I do here is that I'm just saying, okay, for each of these files, I upload it. And again, the SDK abstracts all the underlying functionality. So let me just run this in the background while I'm explaining. And what happens is it then takes based on your local path. Yeah, so meaning that if we look here, scones JPEG, this is actually this one, scones JPEG. We upload this, or we have the cat JPEG, which is this. We're going to upload. And on the other side, we have the timetable. So these are the kind of images that are then uploaded, like an organ or instruments, in order then to use them. The interesting part again is that pending. This is the one running. So State of the Union. This is a process you would do like once in order to use then this temporary online storage. And the advantage is really like you can store up to 2 GB of private access. It is only accessible then with the each uploaded file will then generate a specific URI that you would then take and feed it as the reference in your GPI for your Gemini model. Word of warning, those files cannot be downloaded. So you cannot use it as an, online exchange storage. It's just writing. So yeah, meaning now that the first file, the State of the Union, this was actually an MP3 file, has been uploaded. It gives you then a URI back, and the important part is this one here, files and the unique identifier. This is what you would need in order then to pass as information into your Gemini API request. Yeah, if you have a cat that has been successfully uploaded, we get a different approach, and we let this run. Now the video, it's a short sequence from Zootopia. It's just that you don't see what is behind this information. But this is not a problem, because you can also then get a list about what are the available files in the Files API. So at any time, we can then run the list files, and it will then give you more details about, okay, there's the sample document in rich text format. This is the reference. This is the full URI. It's in text RTF. It has a specific size. You get the timestamp when it has been created and when it has been updated. And there should also be the information when it's going to expire. Then important is that you get this status, whether the file is active or pending, and only files that are in state of being active are the ones that you then can use for further requests. Here as well, we have a PDF that we uploaded, which has roughly 7.2 megabyte. And if you would put this PDF in your uploading it locally from your client each time, 7 megabyte upload takes quite some time. Now that you did the upload once, it's online, and any further requests are then happening online. It is super fast, like, I don't know, X amount of gigabit transfer rates between the Gemini model and the Files API. So the latency is very low in regards to that. Now that we have uploaded those files into the Gemini API, into the Files API, let's use this. And I want to, let's say, describe an audio file. And what I do is that, okay, I have my prompt here. Listen carefully to the following audio file and provide a brief summary. And what I'm saying is that, okay, as I use this in tests, I need to have the list, and I just check, okay, any audio information that has been uploaded, use this and give a brief summary. Of course, in your case, you would upload it. You would then have the file URL, the unique identifier, somewhere stored and cached, and you would address it directly. And if we run this test as well, now by adding the media, add media, the .NET SDK makes it very simple for you. But using the file UI with the MIME type, it now uses this audio file from the remote URL located in the Files API as the input to go forward with this. Yeah. So in this case, it even detected that there are two. Let's see what it. So then it gives me then information that this audio file is a segment of the Made by Google, and I think this is about. It actually it listens to both, because as you see, the first file is the Made by Google podcast, and then it says, oh, the second audio file is JFK's State of the Union address, end of January 61. So even here you see we ingested two audio files with one prompt, and the response differentiated. Oh, hang on. I noticed that there are actually two different types of information. Yeah. So multimodality. Same works with video. So there's no problem about that. Describe a video from a file UI. So again, in my case, I just say, okay, for each video that you find, to run this test, and we run this. Yeah, it then again uses the file URI. It's still pending and running. Just a moment. And now it tells me, all right, it's Google Photo Experiment. Yeah. So Los Angeles Zoo, etc., etc., etc. So pretty fast forward. However, now since newer models, there's also the possibility, in order to, let's say, to avoid video download, video upload, the problem about the Files API only being available or providing those files for 48 hours, size restrictions of maximum 2 GB. All of that is that since beginning of the year is also now that you can reference a YouTube link straight away. Yeah. And again, the SDK just provides you the extension method add media, and you can run this just by providing the YouTube link and then specifying use online true. And then it knows, okay, it's an online resource and it's not about, eventually downloading it and re-uploading or encoding it as base64. So, and when we have a look, it was pretty fast as well. So Gemini 2.0 Flash, now it uses the YouTube link directly. And what's the response? So actually, it's about our local annual developers conference. So it tells me that this is like the teaser about, it showcases the conference venue, attendees, speaker sponsors, and so on. Yeah, it also highlights certain metrics. So there you see as well that there's pretty good recognition in the video, and it tells me, oh yeah, that there was the announcement at the end for this year's conference, in about 2 months' time. So the capability is about, working with different inputs, whether it's text, documents like PDF, which I haven't shown yet, audio files, or video files is pretty good with Gemini. Okay, I'm just having a look at the time. I guess we still
Yeah,
have about half an hour.
I've got a question. So I'm glad you brought up the new models and the new capabilities.
Mhm.
Uh, so obviously AI is a very fast-moving topic these days, right? Constantly new features, new functionality. I wonder, has that negatively impacted your ability to create and maintain this SDK, knowing that it's a constantly shifting landscape?
No, actually not, because, well, actually there's a pretty interesting feature, and I like to show, well, that's actually a good point to show you that quickly. As I said initially, this .NET SDK is based on the REST API. Yeah, so meaning that like in Writer, in Visual Studio, in Visual Studio Code with an extension, you can simply specify your REST API endpoints, specify the API key either as the header or as a, a query string parameter. And when we run this, and let me just show you that, is that in this case, I can okay, with the, I want to have the list of models. This is actually identical in my test case for this functionality about list models. Yeah, so you can use the SDK and say, okay, list the models, and you get a response, which is based on exactly this GET request. And the response now here already like a chef, pre-cooked and defined, gives you then a JSON response with all the models that are available. And if you have a look, for example, at the Gemini 2.0 Flash, that we see, okay, it has its unique name, and these are actually the names that are hidden or let's say covered by the model constants, and some other attributes like limits for the input tokens, the output tokens, but also the supported methods, and default attributes for temperature, top, which is the level of creativity, top K, top P, and so on, as well as max temperature. So these are the details that you get from the API, and what are the supported functionalities. So, which means that I can query the API based on the model that is chosen about what are the possibility or the possible value ranges for certain attributes. On the other side, and that's also very interesting, is that Google has a concept called discovery. And here again, you can, or what I do is that on a regular base, I run this request, and again, as like a chef, you then get this kind of JSON response that gives me everything that is available in the API. So there are parameters, there are the resources, there are the schemas, and the resources are actually the ones that are interesting, because here I get then like access to the files API, and then I see, oh, the files API has a delete method, and I get absolute detailed information about how to use that endpoint. Yeah, for example, if we had a look, the list, yeah, so it tells me, okay, I can send parameters and I will get then a list of files as a response. So with via this discovery API provided by Google, I can on a very, let's say once, twice a week, I can look at this JSON file, and of course it is version under version control. So meaning I can look at the diffs and I clearly, okay, in this case, it's now identical. However, as soon as Google makes a change, I look at the diff and there are then minimal changes. So it's easy for me to stay on par with the official SDKs, because even the official SDKs, like the one for Python, for Java, for JavaScript, they are also using exactly that discovery response. Yeah? And this makes it, in my case, quite simple to go forward with that. If you're interested, all the source code is on the GitHub repository. However, for the remaining time, I want to show you about how you would integrate this into your own code. Yeah. So as I mentioned, or in the README, it is simply about .NET add package MSCC generative AI, or you use a package manager, like here in .NET Writer. So here is the package, the base package, and we see, oh, I could update a couple of examples, which I haven't done yet. Yeah, but there's also then the Microsoft one that is for extensions, or the web, which is then used, for example, in an MVC application. This is simply a stat to go forward with that. If we look, for example, even if you go and say you want to have this in a project file, even for that, you can simply add it as a package reference. Yeah? Okay, now showing you an example. Let's start with the easiest way. Oh, this is unloaded. This is now a shame. Okay, let me swap this to file system. Minimal API. We go in here. We oh, this one. Yeah, there it is. We use the web package because it has the extension methods for ASP.NET. I think I've edited as a global, .NET 8. And so this is automatically available. All the types are available. And then in the program, we see here that, okay, we have our builder, nothing special. And then with the services collection, there is now the helper method, add generative AI, based on the configuration section. And in the configuration section, I have then information like what is the model, what is the API key, and I integrate it with literally like one line of code. I add the model to my web application. And in this case, as it is minimal API, I set up the default route in order then to just generate some code, some response there, like write a history about the history of Mauritius. And if I would run this, it would actually then return the text and I would get the information. Yeah. So meaning that like previous in the tests, you, instead of then saying that you need to create an instance manually, you just say, okay, we have dependency injection. There is then the interface, generative model service. And then I say, okay, create an instance. Then I have my model. And from this point on, as soon as I have my instance of a model, all the other code, like we've seen earlier in the tests cases, is then identical. So I can then use to upload files. I can access the files API to download or to use files in prompts. I can generate code or generate content. I can, have the features about specify a generation config with response type, with response schema, and so on and so on. It's just that this web package gives you the extension method to add generative AI and the interface that you get dependency injection. Okay. Could you generate the code for this SDK and test cases based on the discovery response? Okay, sorry, I didn't see the question earlier. I tried it. However, the problem is that first of all, the response is like 5,500 file lines, and I could generate. However, I did not do it yet because originally back in February last year, I did not know about this Discovery API, and I started Classic. You go into the Google documentation. And then I was getting, over time, over the weeks when I started developing this SDK, I was getting frustrated because it seems that the API team and the documentation team are separated from each other. And the documentation was like lagging massively behind the implementation and the features in the API. So I think at a certain time, there was like 6 or 7 weeks that the documentation team was behind. And I was like, I'm an early adopter. I know that certain features are available, but they are not documented yet because documentation is for public access and not for, restricted access. And I think at around April, May, so like 2.5 months in, I then discovered the Discovery API. And since then, it's the source of truth for me. And everything that is in the SDK is based on this Discovery API. I hope this makes it clear. I looked into code generators. Yeah, it would be possible. Yeah, I have to admit I'm not familiar yet with code generators. And again, it does not use the problem is that you get the resources here and then you get the schemas, which are then describing the types over here. And don't forget, it's Google. The Discovery API is not optimized for C# types and C# semantic. And so they are the best case, I think, are the enumerations because they are not classified as enumerations here in the Discovery API. They are just types with descriptions, like discrete values and not as a clear enumeration. Okay. Now, minimal API, I think that's pretty straightforward. The other thing that I want to show you is about how it's integrated in a sample application, like I showed earlier about using, and I'm going to switch back to solution. So meaning that here as well, this is a desktop or a CLI application, console application. Here I use the main package using MSCC Generative AI. That's it, what you need. We specify the API key, or we let the user enter it. And we specify the model, default model, or again, as you see here, now that I have the client, I can use list model like I did in the tests, and then I can offer a list of available models, and the user then can choose from these models. Here is also then a chat application, and again, we select the model, which is then passed into the client, and we reading the input for the system prompt. We start a chat session. Oh, that's something I didn't show you earlier. So far, generate content is like one shot. You specify your resources, you specify your prompt, you send the request, and you get the response, and the model doesn't know anything afterwards. If you want to hold a conversation, you would actually then start a chat, and instead of telling or calling the generate content method, we are then calling the send message or send message stream. Again, one send message is the synchronous. It waits, whereas send message stream is asynchronous, and it streams the information back, so that you get a better responsiveness in your applications. It also works for the web application. It works for console application. It works for desktop application or even for mobile application. And then we get like an async enumerator, and then for each we can then give the information back. And we keep it in a loop so that, the whole information about what's happening in the chat is then kept in the history. Yeah, so we have a chat session including a history, and while keeping chatting. Yeah, so meaning if I specify something like the exit command, I terminate the chat and would go out of it. But otherwise, it just keeps looping in a do-while loop. Yeah, and we just continue chatting. So, but the difference is start chat and then either send message or send message stream. No worries, it's all explained as well in the README of the package itself. Okay, so now eventually you might say, but I already have an existing application using OpenAI. And I said, okay, that's not a problem, because even for that, there is then Gemini. Google provides a so-called OpenAI compatibility layer, which means their API has OpenAI compatible endpoints. And with that, you can actually, very simple, use the OpenAI functionality. Yeah, as you might already have it. You get your API key in your model. And then for the OpenAI client options, what you need to do is that instead of just specifying the model, you would actually specify the endpoint targeting the REST API endpoint with the version and the OpenAI path. And then Gemini behaves like it would be an OpenAI model, like O4 Mini or something like that. However, you would specify Gemini 2.0 Flash. And you need to specify your API key. And then you, as you might know from OpenAI SDK, you have your client, then you get complete chat, and you can also have your chat conversation like existing code. So it's only about how you specify, how you initiate your chat client with the endpoint and your API key for Gemini. And otherwise, you can use the remaining code. If you're already using OpenAI, just works out of the box. There are some small limitations about specific attributes that the Gemini API does not understand yet. But otherwise, I would say about 85%, 90%, you're good to go on OpenAI endpoints. Yeah, so that's that. And as Microsoft is not sleeping and coming out as well with new capabilities about how to use AI features in .NET applications, you might have heard about the Microsoft Extensions AI package, as well as semantic kernel. And what I did is actually, that's why I created then an MSSC Generative AI Microsoft package, which provides a Gemini chat client based on the required interface from the Microsoft Extensions AI package in order then to chat, to have a chat session, the iChat client. Again, you specify your API key and your model, you're good to go. Yeah, you see effectively 1, 2, 3 lines of code, and then you use the chat methods provided by Microsoft Extensions AI package. Yeah, so you get your chat client and then get response async. So meaning that if you're using Microsoft Extensions AI already, maybe because you're using AI services on Azure or OpenAI or Anthropic directly, now with the MSCC Generative AI Microsoft package, you can use my SDK in order then to have straightforward integration into Microsoft Extensions AI and semantic kernel. Yeah. Additionally, it's not only about chatting, but you also want to have your own activities. The package also offers the embedding generator in order then that you can generate embeddings, vectors, store it somewhere, maybe in a JSON file, maybe in an online store, like a vector database, in order then to play with these kind of functionalities. Yeah, so independent whether you use the SDK directly with the full-fledged Gemini API, if you want to use the OpenAI compatibility, if you want to use the latest Microsoft Extensions AI, which is still in preview, or if you want to use semantic kernel, you can use Gemini this way. And now to use the last 5 minutes, let me get through all these pictures. Here is actually a sample application that has been generated by a Microsoftie, and he created it in order to show about how you can use OpenAI or Ollama, so that you can easily use the same code in order to decide whether you want to work with a remote model or eventually with a local running model using Ollama. And I forked his repository, and what I did is actually I integrated the Microsoft package and added a few lines of code, like here, line 21, like 22. Yeah, if get an API key, and if this is not the case, if there's no API key, then disable Gemini, and then setting up the Gemini chat client. And again, as you see, this is the Microsoft Extensions AI chat client interface as part of the semantic kernel or Microsoft Extension AI. Yeah, there we go, Microsoft Extension AI, vector data, semantic kernel. And what he does in his application is actually that when you run this, let me do that, is that you can specify an YouTube UI, and it, let me just move this down here. It then gets the transcript via the transcript API, then vectorizes this into a vector store. So what he does, he uses then the collection based on the transcript and stores it in a local JSON file. Yeah, so he just uses the transcript chunks and puts it down. In case that the file exists, we load the vector from the JSON file so that we have an in-memory vector database. And here he does the ingester to generate this, ingesting the transcript. And then afterwards, now that we have a prompt, what happens is that he searches in this in-memory vector database about your result. Yeah, so we have it takes the prompt, creates an embedding based on the prompt, and then does a vector search. We have existing embeddings from the video, and our prompt now is an embedding, and we do the vector search, and then get the result. So now that I have no idea about this video, what's this all about? Yeah, so we run this, and now what happens is actually it uses the Gemini API in order then to check what my prompt as an embedding and my local file as an embedding can be used. And this is about using Microsoft Extensions AI. And so, yeah, okay, this is like a video about explanation about what is retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, and how you can use it with PDFs. Yeah, so different approaches: direct API with the SDK, integrating it into ASP.NET Core, using existing code that uses OpenAI SDK. You can edit in by specifying the endpoint. Microsoft Extensions AI and Semantic Kernel. You would use the Microsoft package from my NuGet package, and you can go straight forward and do it according to your own flavors, yeah, as much as you like it. And so again, there are other examples. Oh, I skipped this one. If you want to integrate Google Search, for example, and I think this is a good one. I'd like to show that. Questions so far about the different interfaces? Let me just look for this code. Grounding search. Okay. So typical scenario, what is the current stock price? Up-to-date information. I'm not sure if this is work. No, this is not. This is the old functionality. Sorry. Because it uses grounding. That doesn't work anymore. So instead of stock prices, let's see. Yep, let's try this one. Hopefully the model is, no, I think the model is not available anymore. But anyways, you see that we are then adding a tool about Google Search Retrieval, and I'm not too happy about that. Yeah, this is the right one. So when is the next solar eclipse? So this is something that the model cannot know, and we use Google Search. True. This is the same like the toggle button in Google AI Studio. Generate the content based on the prompt. And oops. And then if we see that, yeah, we get the response. Yeah, we get a very informative information. It's not only, yeah, we specify that we use internally Google Search. So the next total eclipse will be in, yeah, that's a long time, but partial will be next year, which is good. However, we also get then grounding metadata. So meaning that when we activate Google Search for grounding, we get information already as pre-rendered content in order that we can specify and even HTML. So we get the text answer, yeah, about our prompt. However, we also get the sources. Oh, the model did a search on this website with this link. Okay, this is a vertex AI search because it's, in this case, it's using it with Vertex AI. It also uses timeanddate.com in order then to change the prompt to specific keywords, and these were the search expressions that were used in order then to search the web. And as well, we're going to get then a style or like a chip. So meaning if you have a website, you can then use these predefined div elements in order to visualize the information on your website. So in AI Studio, you get all the information. Then at the bottom, you get then these chips as clickable links so that you provide the references to the sources that the model has used in order to generate the answer based on your prompt. And I find this pretty interesting as well. So that was this test. There are other functionalities as well. You can run code execution, which means that what happens is that let me check that. With code execution, it has a specific understanding of certain, what is the sum of the first 50 prime numbers. And we activate this as a tool for code execution. And the model itself is capable to generate Python code in order then to calculate this prompt. Yeah. Right now, Google only offers Python and not .NET, unfortunately. And when we look then, so it knows, okay, there's code execution. And the interesting part is also that you get the generated executable code, you get this back. So this would be the source code in Python about how it would generate the sum of prime numbers. Yeah, and then there's it runs this code, so you get the execution result. Again, this is very detailed information. This is a logging output based on debug, but the actual information that out of your prompt is like to find the first 50 numbers. Yeah, it has the plan and then calculate the sum. So there's the code, and the final answer is then this value. Yeah? And last but not least, if you want to have your own existing code, database access, other third-party applications, and so on, there is something called function calling. And yep. And the Gemini API as well supports function calling. However, you need, and this is not at the moment under work in progress. We are at the moment in the main stream, main branch, but I also have a function call. So in the future releases, there will be better support for function calling, so that you can actually then integrate a tool for function declarations and function calling, so that it can run. So what happens is you send your prompt, the model returns, it interprets this information, you give it functions, available functions, and then the model gives you an intermediate response and say, hey, I detected that you would like to maybe execute function A with parameters 1, 2, 3. And then you run this locally in your context, and the function result you then send back to the model, and then with the initial prompt and your function result, it will then generate the final response. And how does this look like? Is that here we define the function declarations and multiple functions. And the response is now, oh, based on your declarations, I detected that your prompt that you might like to run this defined method with these arguments for movie and location, and that's something you would run then locally, and the result out of this you would then return back. But again, as I said, there's if you're interested, if you're curious, there's a function called branch, which is already operational, but I haven't deployed it. This would be like a preview package. But I think that is right now what is available in the SDK. And let me see that I get the right screen. Again, in the chat you have the links. Experiment with it. You see there are over 50,000 downloads already. Packages, I'm quite often releasing things as well. So it's in active development. Even Microsofties provide pull requests, and I'm adding new models, new features. So 2 weeks ago, last month, so there's quite some activity. Would be happy if you give it a look. Maybe if you like it, give it a star. Via NuGet, you can simply add it via .NET Add package. Again, .NET Framework 4.7.2 is the minimum. Otherwise, it supports .NET 8, .NET 9, .NET Standard 2.0, and .NET 4.7.2. Yeah, license is Apache. If you're worried about this and that, from my side, use it as it pleases you. If there are any issues that you notice or that you are missing features, use the GitHub issues. Would be happy to get your input on certain things. And yeah, experiment with the multimodality about what it can do in regards to generating code. Yeah, even that, generating lists, generate SQL statements. It's all possible. Docker files. So it has a pretty good understanding. Oh yeah, here are the wireframes. So actually I was giving it this right image, and in less than, I would say 2 minutes, I got like, I don't know how many files and tons of code. And when I showed this at a conference talk, and I asked somebody in the audience about how much time they would need to type or to write these 6 screens, and they were like, yeah, at least a day, maybe 2 days in order to write all this code. Okay, with code generators, it might be faster. Yeah, with the SDK, focus on the problem. Yeah, and I like to thank you so much for the questions. Yeah, please leave feedback. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on my website. You can scan the QR code that gets you to my blog. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on X, I'm on Mastodon, I'm on Blue Sky. So feel free to reach out, shoot a note. If you're happy with the SDK, let me know by giving me a star. If you're not happy, please file an issue and I look into that. Yeah, it's a constant active side project that I'm doing, and yeah, it's under active development since last year February. And funny of all, I already got feedback from a couple of developers that they were using the SDK as part of hackathon competitions, and they actually then developed like some cool stuff, and I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. About thanks for using this SDK. That's it.
All right.
Please, Stephen, throw it back to you.
All right. Thank you, Jochen. That was wonderful. Are there, and we're a little bit over here, but are there any other questions for him while we have him here?
Thumbs up.
No,
Thank
saying
you.
nothing, but you have his contact information if you have any other questions for him. Additionally, I did drop that link in the chat again for the survey. As a reminder, that is all completely anonymous, so please feel free to give us your honest feedback on how we're doing as an organization as well as this presentation. We really appreciate the feedback. All right, well, thank you very much, everybody, and have a great rest of your day wherever you are.